are listening to Lady-ish, where wellness gets unfiltered. This is the podcast where real talk meets whole self-transformation. I am your host, Autumn Noble O'Hanlon. I'm a coach, healer, author, and wellness guide, and I have created this unfiltered space for women who want more out of life, but on their own terms. Every week, we will dive into the messy, beautiful, and often contradictory layers of wellness, covering everything from career shifts and body image to energy healing, intuitive living, fitness, burnout recovery, and creating change that actually sticks. Whether you're chasing a new chapter, healing old wounds, or just trying to reconnect with yourself in a loud, overwhelming world, Lady-ish is here to support your evolution. You can expect honest conversations, coaching wisdom, holistic tools, spiritual insights, and permission to be a little bit of everything and nothing that you're not. Because wellness isn't one size fits all, and neither are you. Welcome back to the podcast, my friends. Today we're talking about Litha, the summer solstice celebration observed by many pagan and earth-based spiritual traditions and practices. Whether you think of yourself as someone who is spiritual, religious, or maybe just someone who feels more connected when you spend time in nature, there is, I think, something that's profoundly grounding about aligning yourselves and your body with the rhythms of the natural world. This time of year, on June 21st, this marks the summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere, which is the longest day and the shortest night of the year. It's a moment when the sun reaches its highest point in the sky, which offers us the maximum amount of daylight and symbolizes abundance and vitality, growth and possibility, and kind of everything that I think about in summer. You know, spring is kind of the opening and seeds are planted. And as we enter into the summer season, it's like there's real possibility and light and energy available to us for whatever we want to grow. And so it feels like a time in life where the possibilities are just endless and people tend to feel more inspired. Today, we're going to explore some of the ancient celebrations around the summer solstice. And from a pagan and nature-based tradition perspective, that usually means the celebration of Litha. So we're going to unpack the origins of Litha and how some of those ancient celebrations and practices have actually evolved into modern traditions that we still use today. I'm going to share why I think seasonal living can be so powerful for our mental and emotional well-being. And finally, we're going to conclude where I'll share some very simple but meaningful ways that you can celebrate the solstice yourself. You may be wondering at this point, what is Litha? I've never heard of Litha. Litha is one of 8 seasonal festivals that are celebrated on the wheel of the year, which is what a lot of nature-based traditions use to kind of track these seasonal and moon changes and align with certain types of festivals. The wheel of the year is sort of a modern pagan framework that truly honors not only the changing seasons, but the agricultural cycle of growth, harvesting, kind of settling and regrouping during winter. Litha itself and its celebration falls on the summer solstice, which marks the peak of the sun's power. Throughout history, cultures around the world have recognized this day as significant. For anyone who has traveled throughout the world, you'll find in places like Mexico or Scotland or Ireland, you'll find these ruins or temples or mounds that have openings where the light will shine through it at a particular angle on equinoxes or solstices. And so it doesn't take a lot of work to look around our world and just recognize that these events, these solstice events or these equinoxes and the changing of the seasons have been recognized and celebrated within cultures all over the world for centuries. Long before we had modern calendars, people really depended on the seasonal cycle for survival. They would watch the movement of the sun, the moon, and the stars and the changing seasons so that they could determine when to start planting, when to harvest, when to migrate, and when to prepare for winter. And so paying attention to those celestial events allowed them to plan out their life, their future, their crops, and ultimately their survival. With respect to those seasonal changes and those shifts in agricultural societies, the summer solstice really represented abundance. Crops are growing, the earth is vibrant, it's alive, it's no longer sleeping and coming out of rest like it is in the winter or the spring. During this time, food supplies usually seem pretty promising, and communities get together to celebrate that warmth and fertility and prosperity that the earth is bringing them, and the life giving energy of the sun that is creating and sustaining all of this. In celebrating this time of year, ancient Europeans often lit bonfires on hilltops to kind of honor the light that lingers and remains and gives life. They danced throughout the night. They gathered medicinal herbs and performed rituals that were intended to ensure continued prosperity throughout the growing season. And so it's a celebration of what is growing, but it's also rituals and hope that growth will continue and that the harvest would be bountiful. Many historians look around at our modern society and believe that some of our modern kind of midsummer traditions have its roots in some of these ancient festivals. And those roots show up in things like bonfires, flower crowns, maypole dances, which I remember doing when I was a child, and just community festivals during the summer time. Some of these have origins dating back to these early agricultural cultures in celebration of the sun, the moon, and their cycles. Even today, countries throughout Europe continue a midsummer festival that's filled with flowers and dancing and feasting and honoring this longest day of the year. One of the things that I love about following kind of a nature based spiritual practice is that I feel like when I travel abroad, it brings new awareness and significance to the way that other cultures celebrate these traditions. And if you look around the world, you'll find that some of those historical practices and traditions are still celebrated. So as you start to kind of learn more about the wheel of the year in these different celebrations, it's not difficult to find areas throughout the world that continue to celebrate those roots and engage in some of those traditional practices. And for me, there's something that's so magical about participating in celebrations and traditions and rituals that have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. I just love that sort of cultural connection and the connection to your roots and history that we get through those. It may surprise some of you to know, and maybe it won't since we're talking about Litha, that even though I knew I wanted to go to law school, or I thought that was my calling, and if you've been listening long enough, you know, surprise, that was not really my thing. Before I went into law school, I knew that it didn't really matter exactly what I studied in undergrad because I had this plan. I was going to be a lawyer. So I studied religious studies. That was my primary major. And to appease my parents, I think I also double majored in political science, but my heart was really in religious studies, which meant that I was able to get a pretty in depth foundation in the world's major religious traditions, but also some different kinds of novel or less known religious traditions. And I think knowing that about myself then, it's no surprise now that I continue to read and study in this space even more and integrate some of those more historical religious traditions into my life. I think there was always something there for me. But one of the things I found so fascinating about all of it and fascinating about human history in general is how a lot of traditions, they simply evolve, they don't disappear. But you have to have, you know, the curiosity and the intention to kind of explore and wonder, you know, why do we celebrate this, or where did that story come from, or is there overlap between any of these religious traditions, or maybe a common origin? And the more you kind of get curious and explore, the more I think you kind of start to understand all traditions and faiths in a different kind of a way, which is really beautiful. Historically, as Christianity spread throughout Europe, a lot of those seasonal celebrations were adapted into Christian observances. And I'm not here to, cast any shadow over the Christian faith, but historically, Christianity was a means of colonialism. And how do you get people to support a new colonial power? You adapt their traditions and their rituals in a way that makes sense to them. And maybe you brand it something else like Christianity or Catholicism, whatever it may be. So what we find is that elements of midsummer celebrations start to become associated with more traditional Christian holidays, like the Feast of St. John the Baptist, which is celebrated near the summer solstice. And if you look at a lot of those traditional Christian holidays and kind of explore older pagan traditions and holidays, you're going to find a lot of very interesting correlations. Take it as you will, but the history supports that. Similarly, Christmas aligns very closely with the winter solstice traditions, and Easter incorporates many, many symbols associated with spring fertility and renewal, and some of the traditions and mythology that older pagan cultures endorsed and passed down. So, again, it's just really fascinating to me. The more you kind of dig and get curious about all of these things, the more interesting connections you'll find. My point here in sharing this with you is not necessarily about one tradition replacing another. I see this more as a reflection of humanity's enduring desire to mark important transitions in the natural world with feasts or holidays or particular saints or deities' days. It's this kind of recurring need to celebrate light out of darkness and long days coming out of long nights in the winter, growth after dormancy, and abundance after scarcity. And I think the desire for all of those is universal. And I think it's a very human need to trust that light will follow the darkness, that abundance will come from scarcity. And it's that sort of enduring faith, I think, that is at the root of a lot of these celebrations and festivals. And Litha is really no different because it's that sort of pinnacle opportunity to recognize the light has returned. The earth has opened up again and is producing again. And yes, we went through winter. It was dark and the earth was frozen and things were dormant. But here we are growing again. It's really that honoring of the yin and yang of life that is ever enduring. One of the reasons that I got into and became increasingly interested in seasonal living, some of it harkens back to my religious studies a million years ago in undergrad, but I think a lot of it really came about when I was practicing law. And I felt that pressure to just sort of live the same day every single day of the year. And what I mean by that is this pressure to show up and work really hard for 12, 14, 16 hours a day, every single day. And this sort of implicit understanding that that was possible, that I could be the same person, the same energy, the same output every single day. And I felt it in my bones. Like, this is not normal. This is not natural to push this hard all of the time. It just felt completely off and misaligned for myself. And I felt disconnected from something that I couldn't really put my finger on, because in that space, I just felt like the expectations didn't really change. And so I was supposed to show up the same every day and not change. I was supposed to be productive and keep achieving and keep moving and keep pushing and keep grinding. And there wasn't really any room for kind of pulling back the reins, or, there was no brake pedal. It was all gas. Nature does not operate that way. It has seasons of growth and seasons of rest, periods of expression and energy, and then periods of contraction and reflection. There are moments when things are blooming, and there are moments when things are shedding and dying and making space for something new. When we align ourselves with some of those natural rhythms, we can start to experience less resistance and more flow. The summer solstice is an invitation into a season of visibility, of confidence, creativity, and action. It's not necessarily a season for retreating or hiding. It's a season to shine the light on what's working and what's not working and go after what it is that you see that you want. For me, this time of year, because the light stays longer and starts earlier, this is the time of year where I'm getting up at 4:45 or 5 a.m. every day, just naturally. And it feels good. It feels good to wake up and spend time outside in nature as the earth is waking up every day. That is not a practice that I try to force myself to carry into the winter. Sometimes, yes, meeting in life dictates that I get up really early. But as the earth starts to move into winter and days become darker and light becomes shorter, I allow my body to similarly adjust. And it has become a beautiful way to sort of give myself some ease and give myself a break from feeling like I got to be a 5 a.m. person every day, all year round. It doesn't work for me. And I have found that it's a seasonal thing for me. In the winter, I just feel like my body needs more sleep. And I let myself do that and find a way to make that work. This time of year, especially when I'm getting up earlier, it gives me some special time to really reflect and appreciate what the earth is shining a light on. And I allow myself to explore some important questions like, what is thriving in my life right now? What am I ready to celebrate? Where have I experienced growth this year? And what is starting to grow? What dreams are starting to take shape, in this time of growth and abundance? The solstice really offers a powerful midpoint of the year to pause and take inventory. It's almost like kind of that full moon period where it's like, okay, we see what's working, we see what's not working. Let's focus on a goal and start executing as the moon starts to wane and become a new moon over time. But also as we start to approach winter and days become darker, it's an opportunity to say, okay, what am I going to focus on knowing that winter is coming? Like, where can I focus that last bit of energy? Because now we're at the peak and it's eventually going to slow down and get darker and invite a new season in. So this is an opportunity, a time to do that reflection, to take that inventory and assess, where do I want to focus my energy for the rest of this light period? And we do this not from a place of judgment, but we do it just with simple awareness that we can't accomplish it all, right? Like, we're at the pinnacle of the sun's power. Time is running out. Winter is coming. Like, let's take some things off the list and figure out where we want to focus for the remainder of this time. And I think that's really beautiful because it forces us to stop trying to cram it all in and overachieve. Instead, okay, like, this time is limited. This energy for me is limited. What do I want to do with it? And let's focus on a few things instead of all of the things. In this way, the summer solstice, I think, acts as a reminder that we can just acknowledge what's already grown rather than focusing exclusively on what's still missing, what we haven't done yet, what we haven't accomplished yet. The solstice instead asks, what has done well? And can I continue to nurture that? Or is there something more I want to add to that, but not feeling like we have to be upset about what we haven't accomplished and we've got to get it all in. It's really an invitation to be clearer with our intentions. I think with that in mind, that manifestation through the lens of nature and living in alignment with nature, I think is a lot more accessible because if you think about manifestation as something that's more grounded and we stop treating it like magic, I think that we can have a more fruitful experience with our own manifestations and intentions. And in doing that, we kind of treat it more like nature or even gardening. Manifestation, invites us to prepare and plant the seeds. But when we plant a garden in the spring, we don't expect everything to grow. We kind of hedge our bets. Some things are going to grow, some things are not going to grow. And I think if we can look at manifestation that way, I think it's going to be more fruitful because it sort of goes into it from a space of like, I'm just kind of letting it go. I'm planting the seeds and I'm trusting that the universe will bring me what's in my greatest and highest good. Not everything's going to grow, and that's okay. It's on me to sort of trust. And when we live in alignment with nature, it kind of builds in that assumption, right? We planted actual physical seeds or manifestations and intentions in the spring. Some of them grew, some of them didn't. We water them, we tend to them, we're patient with them, and ultimately we have a harvest. Nature sort of teaches us that every outcome will have its own season. I look out at my garden now and I see that there are these annuals that I was kind of an idiot with last year. I kind of dumped these seeds all over the place thinking that nothing was going to come of them. And they all came up and took over all of our gardens everywhere. My husband, in the nicest way possible, was like, hey, our garden looks really great, but like maybe next year if we could, basically not do that. And I said, okay, these are just annuals. They're not going to come up next year. Well, joke's on me. They're all coming up again. And I say that because sometimes those intentions that we plant during our spring seasons of life, they might not come up right away. And we may be disappointed or we may be frustrated. But I think when we look at it through the lens of nature, we can instead say, okay, maybe that wasn't the season for it. Maybe it will surprise me and it'll come the next season, just like these random annuals that I have coming up again, even though normally that's just not how it operates in the Midwest. So again, I think looking at our manifestations and intentions through that lens of nature allows us to have more compassion and more patience and just trust that even though things aren't coming to fruition now or they haven't worked out just yet, it doesn't mean never. It may just mean not now, not in this season. And we can trust that maybe on the next season or maybe on the next cycle, things will come around for us. But it makes it easier to sort of let it go and keep our energy high and clean. With that in mind, the summer solstice is kind of that check-in point where we can say what's doing well, what's starting to grow, instead of thinking about what's not growing and what hasn't come up yet. Instead, we can kind of look at what is doing well and access gratitude there, noticing what already exists and being thankful for it. This is so important because that simple act of noticing and gratitude will only amplify your awareness as to all the other things in your life that may also be going well. And if we can access gratitude on a more regular basis, all of your manifestations are going to do better and you're going to see so much more good in your life. That awareness often starts to reveal other opportunities that we may have overlooked while we were busy being frustrated that our other manifestations or seeds have not grown yet. So it all kind of works together for our own greatest and highest good. In short, what I'm saying is that this time of year, the summer solstice is really inviting us to celebrate progress and honor abundance and continue nurturing what matters most and having faith that wasn't what hasn't come about. It's not that it may never come about, but maybe just not right now. And maybe it's not in alignment for you. And that's okay. With all of that in mind, I want to offer some very simple rituals that you can use to honor the solstice on your own for yourself and really start taking stock of some of these important questions and reflections that I think Litha is inviting of us. As always, I try and keep it as simple as possible. You don't need anything really elaborate, any kind of fancy ceremony to honor the solstice, because sometimes I think the most meaningful rituals are the simplest ones. And ultimately, it all comes back to your intention and allowing this to be a time of intentionally taking stock, being grateful for what's working, and focusing our energy moving forward. The first and simplest way to honor Litha is to just watch the sunset or the sunrise. Just spend a few moments witnessing the sun's journey and sort of awakening of the earth any morning. Leave your phone behind and just sit there and observe and sort of listen as the birds kind of awaken with the sun, as the light kind of shines a light on all the land around you, watching it kind of travel, and just notice how it starts to feel to be present with something that humans have been watching and celebrating for thousands of years. I think it's just a very simple and beautiful way to connect with history, connect with our ancestors, but connecting with the earth and this time of year. Create a flower offering. As I mentioned, the summer solstice is an opportunity to sort of celebrate what is working. And if you're a garden person or if you just like flowers, that is something that is growing and working well right now. And the abundance is all around us. So gather some flowers, either from your garden or from a local market. Maybe go for a walk outside and pick what's available to you and place them somewhere in your space. Maybe you have an altar where you meditate or engage in prayer every day. Maybe you just want them in your desk where you can see them. There's no special place to put them, but it's having them around you to remind you that life is blooming, that things are coming together, that even when we're inside our offices working and we're not completely aware, the world is happening, that life is happening outside of the walls. Things are blooming and growing just as they are in our lives, but we might not always notice them. And that's what the flowers really invite us to do. Just notice the beauty and abundance around us. Have a solstice picnic. Maybe you invite friends along, maybe you do it on your own or just with your partner, but just enjoy a meal outside. Grab some seasonal fruits. Again, we're celebrating what the earth is manifesting and the abundance around us right now. So seasonal fruits. And just notice the beauty around you and allow yourself to really receive the food and the blessings and the beauty around you without the need to produce or do anything. So, as much as I love to read, leave the book at home, leave the phone at home, leave the music at home, and just enjoy some time in nature, consuming foods that are in season and allowing yourself just to sort of be present with the abundance around you. Make some solar water. Now, before you roll your eyes on me here, you might want to go back and listen to some of the episodes I had earlier around the experiments of Dr. Emoto and how our energy can actually change the crystal structures of water. And so there's a couple episodes on there about whether or not our brains and our thoughts can actually hurt us. But then there's another episode on those experiments in general. But this is sort of kind of the background or maybe the science behind this ritual too. What this ritual is simply doing is taking a glass of water and you place it outside in the sunlight for a few hours. And as that water sits there and kind of soaks in the warmth of the sun, just reflect on the qualities that you want to embody during this coming season. And it could be confidence or presence, joy, creativity, courage, whatever feels aligned with you and what you're wanting to do with your energy for this upcoming season. And just kind of meditate on those qualities. And if you even want to go farther, you can kind of imagine yourself placing that energy and those emotions into the water. And then you drink the water as a symbol, a symbolic act of yourself embodying those qualities. That is one that I enjoy doing regularly, not just for the solstice. I try to bless my food, bless my coffee, bless my water in the morning, and actually imagine placing positive energy into that water. In my mind, I am changing the crystal structure, just like Dr. Emoto's experiments, and then bringing that pure structured water into my body and hoping that it does something magical for myself. I don't know, take it or leave it, but it's something that really helps me kind of set the tune for my day. But it's also a beautiful solstice ritual. The last simple ritual should be no surprise to any of you. It's just journaling. Set aside a few minutes, probably more than we would normally do, because there's a couple questions that I think are really ripe for exploration this time of year. First and foremost, what has grown in my life since the beginning of the year? What am I proud of that I've been overlooking? Where am I being invited to shine more brightly? What am I ready to celebrate? What am I committed to nurturing during the second half of the year? What habits or beliefs are preventing me from fully stepping into my power? Last, and my favorite, is if my future self were celebrating 6 months from now, what would she thank me for beginning today? In other words, 6 months from now, if I want to be celebrating, what would I need to start doing today that I can be grateful that I began now? This is an invitation for you to write freely, without editing, without censoring, and without judgment. Just allow yourself to acknowledge both your growth, but also your desires and your dreams for the latter half of the year. For those of you wanting a more in-depth Litha ritual, you're going to want to gather a candle, 3 pieces of paper, a small dish of water, and just some symbolic items for the season. So this could be flowers, it could be crystals, any natural objects that feel significant. Crystals and colors and flowers that correlate with Litha include sunflower, chamomile, lavender, rose, calendula, daisies, or wildflowers. If herbs are more accessible to you, that could be rosemary, mint, basil, thyme, St. John's wort. If you want to add some lovely essential oils to your ritual, you could include citrus, orange, lemon, bergamot, my favorite, lavender, rose, or sandalwood. And if you're a crystal girly, crystals that align with the solstice include citrine, sunstone, no surprise there, carnelian, tiger's eye, amber, or pyrite. If you just want to gather some colorful flowers and things that kind of align with the colors of the solstice, those colors include gold, yellow, orange, red, green, and white. None of those are entirely surprising if you kind of look around at the season. So go ahead and gather those items that you want to use for your ritual. And we begin by simply cleansing your space. You can use sage or Palo Santo. You can use a room spray that resonates with you. You can just open some doors and some windows, but just creating some cleansing in your space that feels meaningful for you. This is something you can perform at any time around the solstice. I think most people prefer to do it on the evening of the solstice. But again, it's really the intention behind it that matters most, more so than the precise timing. To get started, we light the candle and allow that flame to represent the sun. Next, we place a bowl of water beside the candle to represent balance, fire and water. And then we'll start gathering those items that we mentioned, whatever you decided that you want, flowers, crystals, oils, anything that felt significant. We're going to start gathering those and kind of placing them around the water and the candle. As you have all these sort of pieces together, you just spend a few moments in quiet prayer, meditation, deeply breathing, and just grounding yourself into the space. Once you're feeling comfortable and settled in, we're going to reflect on 3 things. And ultimately, I'll have you write your answers to those 3 questions on each of those 3 separate pieces of paper. The first question or exploration is, what has blossomed for me so far this year? So this is where we take stock of what's going well, what's growing, what's bearing fruit. The next question is, what still needs nourishment? So what is, maybe chugging along, but maybe needs a little bit more support. It's not going as well as we would like. And we record that on its own piece of paper. Last, we consider, what am I ready to release? And we start recording that on its own piece of paper. So what we're ready to release, it could be old beliefs, habits, it could be individuals or experiences in our life that kind of drain us or bog us down. Maybe it's projects or goals that just don't align with us anymore. Maybe we want to set them aside to revisit in a new season. But really challenging yourself to consider, what can I release for the second half of this year, and write that on that 3rd piece of paper. Now that you have your lists, we're going to start with the blossomed list. And I want you to take that list of everything that has really done well and seems to be flourishing, and I want you to read it out loud. And as you read it, allow yourself to feel gratitude, pride, and joy, and celebrate those achievements and feel that positive energy coursing through you. And these don't have to be perfect or done accomplishments, but we're inviting ourselves to take a moment of gratitude for what has already begun or has started to really flourish. Next, we take the nourishment list. And I want you to review that list and identify one thing, one action that you can take this week to support those items that just need a little bit more encouragement or more focused effort. So, just coming up with a handful of small actions that you can commit to continue to invest in and nourish those intentions. Last, we will read the release list. Read that release list out loud. And as you read it, allow yourself compassion and support for letting go of these things, trusting that it doesn't have to be not ever. It could simply be a not now or not in this season, but really honoring your choice to protect your energy and realign here. So read that list out loud. And when you're finished, safely burn that piece of paper or tear it into small pieces as a symbolic act of letting go of those things. So, whatever best aligns with where you are in your space or outdoors, if you're not able to burn it, tearing it up will do just fine. We just want to symbolize physically that we are letting those things go. To close the ritual, we just simply find gratitude and we can speak out loud gratitude for ourselves, for this season, for the fruits of our efforts, for the work that we've done, but really forcing yourself to find gratitude for the efforts that you've put in and honoring who you have been and how you have shown up to create what you have in this season and the growth that you've created or the opportunities that continue to unfold. So we close the ceremony by speaking gratitude or ruminating or meditating on gratitude for yourself. At the conclusion of your gratitude practice, just allow yourself to sit quietly for a few moments to connect with the earth and invite a space of openness and receiving. And so, as we sort of let go of the things that are maybe not working or we want to redirect our energy, we're creating space to receive guidance and insights and new opportunities to help us align better moving forward. And so at the conclusion of this ritual, we just take space to sit in silence and spend some moments to simply receive and just notice what comes up. Maybe grab a journal and record anything that may be coming to mind as you sit in this new space of lightness, openness, and gratitude. In closing, remember that the summer solstice is a reminder that life is not meant to be lived in a constant state of doing and striving and going. There are moments for planting, there are moments for growth, there are moments for harvesting or even culling things that are not working. And more importantly, I think there are moments for celebration. And oftentimes we kind of bypass those and just go on to the next planting season, the next goals. And so the summer solstice is a reminder that as we accomplish things, as we grow, as we do things, as there are things to be grateful for, it is important to take time to celebrate those and celebrate ourselves. Litha invites us to pause long enough to recognize the abundance that's already around us and present in so many aspects of our lives, and to acknowledge how far we've come, to reconnect with the wisdom of the natural world, and to remember that we too are part of nature. And as you move through this solstice season, I hope that you find moments of joy and gratitude and connection. And may you find an opportunity to honor what's blooming and trust what is still growing for you. And finally, may you allow yourself to shine as brightly as the sun does on this summer solstice. We are all connected. We are all part of that light. And it's an invitation for us to kind of wake up and honor that. So I hope you have a beautiful summer solstice and find a way to celebrate that aligns with you and where you are in your life. Thank you so much for being here, my friends. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out and send me an email, autumn@theuncomfortabledream.com.